My name is Daniel. I'm 32 years old, and I never thought I'd be the kind of man telling a story like this. Life has a twisted sense of humor, though, and somehow I ended up in the front row seat of my own nightmare. You know, I always thought betrayal was something that happened to other people. The kind of story you overhear at a bar, whispered with pity. Never in a million years did I imagine that my wife, the woman I promised forever to, would be the one holding the knife at my back. It started on a Wednesday night. One of those nights where nothing feels special, just another blur between work and sleep. I had gotten home late, the kind of late where your body feels like it's been carrying bricks all day. All I wanted was the warm smile of my little girl Lily, and maybe a plate of leftovers waiting for me in the kitchen. Instead, I opened the door to a silence that felt unnatural. Not the quiet comfort of home, but a cold, suffocating silence, like walking into a church right before a funeral. Lily was in the living room, curled up on the couch, clutching her stuffed bunny. She looked at me with wide, wet eyes, the kind that told me she had already seen too much for a 6-year-old. And then I noticed the suitcase. It wasn't mine. It wasn't Lily's. It was hers, my wife's. I felt my stomach sink, like I had missed a step on a staircase and kept falling. She appeared from the bedroom a moment later, wearing a dress I hadn't seen in years, the kind of dress you save for someone new, not the man you've been married to for almost a decade. She didn't have to say a word. Her eyes were enough. They carried guilt, excitement, and a kind of cruel detachment that ripped through me like glass. There was a man outside waiting for her. I didn't know his name yet, didn't even care in that moment. All I could see was the shadow of his car headlights seeping through the blinds, waiting to swallow her whole. She told me it was over. Just like that. Like the last 10 years of my life were a TV show she got bored of and decided to switch the channel. The worst part? She didn't just leave me, she kicked me out. Me and Lily said we'd figure it out, as if father and daughter being homeless was some puzzle game she couldn't be bothered to finish. I should have screamed. I should have begged. I should have done something dramatic, like those scenes you see in movies. But I didn't. I couldn't. I was frozen, holding my daughter's hand as she shoved us out of our own house. The lock clicked behind us, and that sound, it still echoes in my head. The sound of a door closing, not just on a home, but on a family, on trust, on everything I thought I knew about love. The night air was cold. I remember Lily shivering, and I gave her my jacket. I tried to smile, tried to tell her it would be okay, but my voice cracked like a broken violin string. Inside, I was already plotting. Already imagining the fire of revenge that would someday burn through every last ounce of her comfort. But that night, revenge was just a whisper. Survival came first. We walked to my car, the one that barely ran anymore, and sat inside. I turned the heater on, even though it coughed out more dust than warmth. Lily fell asleep against my arm, her bunny squished between us. And me? I stared at that house, at the window where she once waved goodbye every morning, now lit up by someone else's headlights. I wanted to storm back in. I wanted to drag that man out and make him regret ever laying eyes on her. But instead, I sat there, clutching the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. My father used to tell me, revenge is best served cold. At the time, I thought it was just an old saying. That night, I realized it was a promise. I didn't know how, I didn't know when. But I swore, as my daughter slept beside me, that I would make her pay. Not just for me, for Lily. For every tear that little girl cried because of her mother's selfishness. And that was the night everything fell apart. And the night everything truly began. I didn't drive far that night. My car was old, the kind of old that screamed at you every time you hit the brakes, and the gas tank was almost empty. I pulled into a cheap roadside motel, one of those places with flickering neon signs and a reputation for more broken dreams than restful sleep. The kind of place where you don't ask questions at the front desk because the answers will keep you awake at night. I scraped together the last of my cash, just enough for a room that smelled like mildew and bad decisions. The carpet was stained, the wallpaper peeling, and the bed sagged like it had carried the weight of too many lives before mine. But to Lily, it was heaven. She jumped onto that bed like it was a castle, her little bunny tucked under her chin, finally letting out the kind of laugh that cracked my heart in half. Kids are amazing like that. Their innocence can turn even hell into something bearable. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying the night over and over. Every detail felt like a stab. The way she dressed up for him, the way she didn't hesitate, the way she looked at me like I was disposable. I thought about the man waiting outside. Who was he? Some smooth-talking stranger with promises of adventure? Or maybe he was just richer than me, offering her shiny things I couldn't afford. I didn't know yet, but I promised myself I would find out. Lily fell asleep quickly, snoring softly, her small hand clutching mine. I envied her. For her, the world could still be fixed with ice cream and cartoons. For me, everything felt broken beyond repair. The next morning, I walked out to the front desk to grab a stale cup of coffee. The clerk, a heavyset man with more tattoos than teeth, gave me that look. The one that says, "Another poor soul dumped into this pit." I wanted to tell him everything, to unload the storm inside me. But instead, I just nodded, grabbed the coffee, and walked out. I needed a plan. Not just for revenge, that would come later, but for survival. Lily deserved better than a motel bed and vending machine dinners. My bank account was nearly empty. Most of what we had went into the house she had just claimed with her new man. I didn't even have enough to cover daycare, let alone the bills. So I swallowed my pride and called my buddy, Eric. Now, Eric isn't exactly the guy you call when you need stability. He's the guy you call when you're about to make a bad decision and want company doing it. But he was the only one I had. He listened quietly as I explained everything. Then, in his usual blunt style, he said something that stuck. "Man, don't waste your energy crying over her. Use it. Weaponize it." At first, I laughed. Weaponize heartbreak? It sounded ridiculous. But as I drove back to the motel, the words grew louder in my head. Maybe that was the answer. Maybe, instead of wallowing in pain, I needed to sharpen it into something deadly. That night, Lily and I ate dinner from a gas station, microwave burritos and bottled juice. She thought it was fun, like camping. I pretended it was too. But deep down, I felt the anger bubbling stronger than ever. Every time I pictured my wife in that house with him, the fire inside me grew hotter. I didn't know how long we'd be stuck in that motel, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let this be the end of my story. No, this was just the ugly first chapter of something bigger. Something darker. And as I lay awake, listening to the sounds of the motel, doors slamming, muffled arguments, the occasional siren in the distance, I made another promise to myself. I wasn't just going to survive. I was going to rise from this, stronger than before. And when I did, she would regret every second of her betrayal. But I couldn't tell Lily that. All she needed to know was that Daddy had a plan. So I kissed her forehead, whispered that everything would be okay, and stared into the darkness, already plotting the revenge that would one day make history in our little town. The motel smelled like regret. But to me, it smelled like the beginning of something else too, the birth of a storm. The motel became our unwanted home for the next week. Every morning, I woke up with that same pit in my stomach, staring at the stained ceiling like it held the answers to my life. Lily, though, she adapted faster than me. She drew pictures with crayons on scraps of motel receipts, smiling like nothing had changed. I envied that. I envied how a child could still find joy while her father sat drowning in bitterness. I kept telling myself, just survive. But survival was expensive. The motel charged daily. Food was a problem, and my savings were bleeding dry. Every dollar I spent felt like one more nail in the coffin of the life I once had. Meanwhile, she was probably sipping wine in my kitchen with her new man, laughing, living without a care. The thought gnawed at me like rats in the walls. One night, after putting Lily to sleep, I sat outside in the parking lot, staring at the buzzing neon sign. A drunk couple stumbled past me, fighting about money, and the woman screamed that she deserved better. It hit me then. Those were the same words my wife once threw at me. I deserve better. Better than what? A husband who worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over her head? A father who adored his child more than life itself? That's when the anger finally crystallized into something sharper. Revenge. But revenge isn't born all at once. It starts small, like a match sparking in the dark. Mine began with curiosity. Who was he? The man she thought was better than me? I didn't know his name, his face, or what he did for a living. But I had to find out. So I did what any desperate, half-broken man would do. I started digging. Social media became my weapon. I scrolled through her friends list, her tagged photos, every comment that seemed too friendly. And there he was, a guy named Thomas, 38 years old. Worked in real estate. Single, at least until he wasn't. His profile was littered with pictures of expensive cars, fancy vacations, and a smile that screamed arrogance. He was one of those men who loved showing off money, because without it, he had nothing else to offer. And just like that, the first spark of revenge was born. I didn't want to just hurt her. I wanted to destroy him too. Make them choke on the very fantasy they thought was better than me. I knew I couldn't walk up to their door and knock him out. That would land me in jail, and Lily needed me free. No, I had to be smarter. Cunning. That night, I started writing down ideas in a cheap notebook. It was almost laughable, me, the motel dad, plotting like some anti-hero in a bad thriller movie. But the more I wrote, the more alive I felt. Revenge gave me energy. It gave me focus. It gave me purpose at a time when everything else had been ripped away. The first step was information. I needed to know where Thomas lived, what he drove, who he did business with. Real estate meant he had clients, deals, money on the line. That was his weak spot. Everyone has one. You don't take a man down by punching his face. You take him down by ripping away the thing he values most. For him, it was wealth and reputation. The motel clerk noticed my late-night scribbling at the table and joked that I looked like a man planning a heist. Maybe I was, except my prize wasn't money, it was satisfaction. Meanwhile, Lily remained blissfully unaware. Every morning, she asked if Mommy was coming back. I forced a smile, told her we'd be okay. Each lie tasted like poison, but what else could I do? She didn't need the weight of betrayal pressing on her small shoulders. That was mine to carry. The truth? Part of me wanted to just pack up and disappear. Start a new life somewhere far away. But another part, the darker part, refused to let them win. They took my home, my stability, my dignity. I wasn't going to let them take my peace too. So there, in that dingy motel room, I lit the first spark of the storm. I didn't know how long it would take or how far I'd go, but I knew this. By the time I was done, she and her new man would wish they had never crossed me. The fire had been lit, and I was ready to burn everything down. The motel walls felt tighter with every passing day, like the room itself was closing in on me. I wasn't meant to rot in a box while she played house with another man in the home I built. No, this was temporary. A waiting room for something bigger. Something sharper. I started driving around town at night. Lily would be asleep in the back seat, wrapped in a blanket, her bunny tucked under her chin, while I sat behind the wheel, my eyes fixed on the roads like a predator stalking prey. I wasn't proud of it, but pride had left me the night she locked me out of my own home. All that was left was rage, and rage doesn't care about pride. I found him sooner than I expected. Thomas, Mr. Fancy Real Estate. His car wasn't hard to spot. A shiny black BMW that screamed midlife crisis. He parked it right outside my house, yes, my house, and walked inside like he owned it. Watching him slide his key into the same lock that had once kept me safe was like being stabbed with a blade I couldn't pull out. I sat across the street, engine off, lights dimmed, just watching. I wanted to rush in, but I forced myself to stay still. Revenge isn't about explosions. It's about patience. You wait, you study, you learn. And so I did. Over the next week, I shadowed him, found out where he worked, the office he strutted into every morning like he was king. I saw the way he smiled at his clients, shaking hands, flashing those perfect white teeth. To everyone else, he looked successful, confident, untouchable. But I knew better. Men like him always have cracks in their armor. The trick was finding them. One night, I followed him downtown. He stopped at a bar, the kind where men in suits loosen their ties and try to drink away the emptiness money can't fill. I sat 2 stools away, ordered a beer, and listened. He was loud, cocky, bragging about a deal he'd just closed. His laugh was the kind that made you want to break his jaw. But then, there it was. The crack. He complained about a client threatening to back out of a deal. Said if he lost it, he'd be screwed financially. My ears burned at that word. Screwed. That was the key. The more I listened, the more the plan began to take shape. I wasn't going to touch him physically. That would be too easy, too quick. No, I was going to dismantle him piece by piece. Take away everything he thought made him better than me. His money, his reputation, his pride. But the strangest part? There were moments where I almost laughed. Like when he bragged about stealin' me wife, as if she was some trophy from a claw machine he won at the arcade. If only he knew the truth. She wasn't a prize. She was a ticking bomb, and sooner or later she'd turn on him too. And I was going to speed that process up. Back at the motel, I lay awake with my notebook open, scribbling down every detail. Dates, places, clients' names overheard at the bar. It felt like plotting a chess game. Every move mattered. One mistake, and I'd ruin my chance. But if I played it right, he'd crumble. And she would be right there with him. Lily stirred in her sleep that night, mumbling for her mom. My chest tightened. How could I explain to her that the woman who gave her life had thrown her away for greed and lust? I couldn't. All I could do was hold her close and whisper promises I wasn't sure I could keep. Promises that one day she'd understand why I had to do what I was about to do. The hunt had begun. And like every hunter knows, once you get the scent of your prey, there's no turning back. The storm was no longer just in my head. It was out there, circling him, closing in. Revenge doesn't arrive with fireworks. It comes quietly, like a shadow sliding under the door, waiting until you least expect it. By the fifth night of following Thomas, I knew his routine like clockwork. Same office, same bar, same smug walk through my front yard as if he owned the world. He was predictable. And predictable men are the easiest to break. I started small, subtle. The kind of moves that wouldn't point back to me, but would make his life itch like a rash he couldn't scratch. His car, for example, that perfect black BMW he polished every Saturday morning in my driveway. One night, while Lily slept soundly in the backseat of my car, I slipped out with a pocket knife and crouched by his tires. I didn't slash them. No, that was too obvious. Instead, I loosened the valve stems, just enough for the air to leak slowly. By morning, he'd find himself with a flat, late for whatever deal he thought was so important. It worked like a charm. I sat across the street in my car, sipping stale gas station coffee as he stomped around in frustration, calling for a tow. My wife came out in her robe, rolling her eyes like his problems were now hers to manage. Watching her carry his misery felt like a twisted kind of justice. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. The next step was information. I couldn't take him down with petty pranks. I needed leverage, real damage. So I started visiting his office. Not directly, of course. I posed as a potential client, walking into the sleek lobby with a fake name and a smile. The receptionist handed me brochures and forms, completely unaware that I was studying every inch of their operation. I noted the names of employees, overheard their complaints in the waiting area, even caught wind of a pending lawsuit whispered over coffee. It amazed me how much people reveal when they think no one's listening. That night, I pieced everything together in my notebook. A messy spiderweb of names, dates, deals. I circled the weak spots. A dissatisfied client here. An overworked employee there. Little cracks that, with the right push, could widen into disasters. Meanwhile, life at the motel was wearing me down. The smell of damp carpet clung to my clothes. The thin walls carried every argument from the next room. And Lily deserved so much more. She never complained, though. Every morning she woke up, brushed her bunny's ears, and asked if today was the day we went home. I lied again, told her soon. Told her Daddy was fixing things. But lying only fueled my rage. And rage sharpened my focus. So I went back to the bar where Thomas spent his nights. This time, I sat closer, nursing a drink while pretending to scroll on my phone. He was already drunk, bragging to some guy about closing a big property deal. His words slurred, his voice booming across the room like he owned it. That's when he dropped a name, a client. A wealthy one, and more importantly, one he clearly hadn't secured yet. That was my opening. The next morning, I found that client's office and made a visit. I played the part of a concerned citizen, dropping little hints about Thomas's shady reputation. Nothing concrete, nothing that could be traced. Just whispers of doubt, enough to plant seeds. I left the office with a polite smile, knowing those seeds would grow. The beauty of revenge is patience. You don't need to swing the hammer right away. You just loosen the screws, and eventually the whole structure collapses under its own weight. That night, as Lily fell asleep against me, I realized something dark. I was enjoying this. Too much. The planning, the secrecy, the power of watching a man's perfect life start to crack, it was intoxicating. Maybe that made me no better than them. Or maybe it just made me human. A man pushed too far, finally taking back control. Either way, there was no turning back. The first strike had landed. And it felt good. The thing about revenge is, once you taste it, you want more. Like blood in the water, it pulls you deeper, makes you hungrier. The little stunt with his tires, the whispers to his client, those were appetizers. I wanted the main course. I wanted him choking on the same emptiness he left me with. And the best way to do that? Hit his foundation. His work, his money, his shiny mask of success. I spent days shadowing him, learning everything I could about his deals. He was reckless, I discovered. Too confident in his charm, too blind to notice the wolves circling him. And me? I was the hungriest wolf of them all. One afternoon, while Lily was coloring on motel paper bags, I slipped out and visited the courthouse. Public records are gold mines if you know what you're digging for. Property deeds, lawsuits, complaints, they were all there, waiting to be uncovered. And Thomas? He had plenty buried in his backyard. A couple of messy disputes, one settled quietly with money. Nothing illegal, but enough to look ugly if dragged into the light. I copied everything. Built a file thicker than my patience. Then I started sending it out anonymously. To clients, to partners, to anyone who might think twice before signing papers with him. Nothing destroys a man faster than doubt, especially in business. Deals started slipping through his fingers like sand. But I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. I wanted my wife to feel it too, to feel the collapse of the little fantasy she'd chosen over me. So one night, I drove past the house, my house, and parked down the street. Through the window, I saw them. She was cooking, laughing, pouring him a drink. My blood boiled. That used to be my chair, my plate, my life. Now it was his. I could have left. I could have turned around and spared myself the sight. But no, I stayed. I wanted the image burned into my brain. Fuel for the fire. And as I sat there, an idea came to me, dark and irresistible. I knew his car was everything to him. That BMW wasn't just transportation, it was an extension of his ego. So I waited. Midnight rolled around, the house lights dimmed, and the street fell silent. I slipped out of my car, crouched low, and approached his precious machine. My heart pounded like a war drum, adrenaline buzzing through every vein. I didn't key it. That was too simple. Too obvious. Instead, I opened the gas tank and poured in sugar. A slow, silent death for the engine. By morning, his pride and joy would be nothing more than a shiny coffin sitting on 4 wheels. Walking back to my car, I almost smiled. Almost, because as much as I enjoyed imagining his rage, I knew it was only a step. The real prize was still ahead. Back at the motel, Lily stirred in her sleep, her small voice whispering for her mom again. The sound cut through me. It wasn't fair. None of this was fair. She was too young to know betrayal, too pure to understand the darkness her mother had thrown us into. And yet, here she was, living in a dingy motel while her mom played house with another man. I kissed her forehead, tucked her in tighter, and sat at the table, staring at my notebook. The plan was growing, branches reaching further, darker. I wasn't just dismantling his career anymore. I wanted to dismantle their lives, piece by piece. And then, almost like fate, an opportunity dropped in my lap. I overheard a conversation at the bar, 2 agents talking about Thomas losing a big client. Apparently, he'd been desperate, scrambling, even drinking more than usual. His golden touch was fading. That was my doing, and hearing it from strangers' mouths made it sweeter than any whiskey I could buy. But the best part? My wife had staked everything on him. She left stability for his flash. If his empire crumbled, so would her comfort. The house, the fancy dinners, the smug little life, they'd all collapse. And when it did, she'd finally taste the poison she served me. As I closed my notebook that night, a wicked thought crossed my mind. Maybe revenge wasn't just about making them lose. Maybe it was about making them turn on each other. Let them tear each other apart, while I sat back and watched. And so, the next phase of the storm began. Every empire looks unshakable from the outside, until you're standing close enough to see the cracks. Thomas and my wife built theirs on quicksand, lust, money, and lies. It was only a matter of time before it sank. And I was more than happy to speed it up. The sugar trick worked like magic. A few days later, I saw his BMW on a tow truck, hood open, his face red with fury as he argued with the mechanic. I parked far enough away to enjoy the show, sipping cheap coffee while he paced up and down my driveway like a child who lost his favorite toy. My wife hovered nearby, her arms crossed, irritation painted all over her face. She wasn't built for inconvenience. Luxury had spoiled her, and Thomas's cracks were showing. That was when I knew the storm was working. I didn't stop there. I sent a few anonymous emails to his company's clients, short, sharp hints that they should reconsider doing business with him. Nothing detailed, just whispers that something shady was brewing. Humans love gossip more than truth, and in business, suspicion spreads faster than fire. Soon enough, the whispers turned into real problems. Deals slipped away. Clients ghosted him. His office phone must have rung endlessly, though fewer people picked up on the other end. And with every loss, his shoulders drooped lower, his voice grew sharper, his nights at the bar stretched longer. But the real victory came at home. One evening, I parked outside again, lights off, hidden in the shadows. Through the curtains, I watched the show unfold. He stormed into the kitchen, slamming his jacket on the counter. She followed, her face twisted in annoyance. Their mouths moved fast, their gestures sharp. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. I knew that dance. I knew how she'd tilt her head when she was fed up, how she'd throw her hands up when she felt unappreciated. It was almost poetic, watching her feed him the same poison she once fed me. Lily slept in the back seat, unaware of the theater her parents were starring in. I sat there, torn between bitterness and satisfaction. It hurt to see her laugh with him days ago, but seeing her fight with him now? That was medicine. Still, I wanted more. I didn't just want arguments. I wanted war. So, I dug deeper. One night at the bar, I cornered one of Thomas's coworkers. A slick young agent with too much cologne and not enough sense. I bought him a drink, played the role of a curious stranger, and let him talk. And talk he did. Drunk men are fountains of information. He spilled everything. Thomas had been sloppy with his books, cutting corners, juggling too many risky deals. The company was stretched thin. One bad break and he'd collapse. I left the bar smiling for the first time in weeks. The next day, I made sure one of those risky deals broke. A quiet phone call to a client, a planted rumor about a lawsuit, and suddenly Thomas was on the verge of losing another property. It was like pushing dominoes. Once one fell, the rest couldn't help but follow. And at home, the fights grew worse. She started leaving the house late at night, slamming the door, probably calling her friends to complain about how her perfect man was falling apart. I almost laughed thinking about it. She traded stability for glitter, and now the glitter was washing off, leaving her with nothing but dust. There was one moment I'll never forget. I watched from my car as Thomas stormed out, keys in hand, shouting over his shoulder. She stood at the door, arms folded, lips curled in disgust. He drove off fast, tires screeching. She stayed on the porch a moment longer, staring into the night, and for just a second, her face crumbled. The confidence, the excitement, it was gone. She looked tired, worn down, alone. And that's when it hit me. I wasn't just breaking him. I was breaking her too. Slowly, quietly, the same way she broke me. The cracks in their castle were widening, and soon the whole thing would collapse. All I had to do was keep pushing. By the time the second week rolled around, their shiny little kingdom was rotting from the inside. I didn't even have to do much anymore. They were tearing each other apart, and I just sat back, feeding the fire when needed. Thomas was unraveling fast. His deals kept slipping away, one after another. The whispers I planted had done their job, and now he looked like a man drowning in quicksand, thrashing harder only to sink deeper. His perfect smile was gone. His shirts stayed wrinkled, ties crooked, eyes bloodshot from too many late nights at the bar. And my wife? She was cracking under the weight too. She had signed up for wealth, comfort, the fantasy of being pampered. Instead, she found herself dealing with a bitter man who snapped at her, a bank account that was shrinking, and a reputation tied to someone falling from grace. I could see it in her face when I spied from the street. Regret. The same regret I used to see in the mirror after arguments with her. It was almost poetic. One night, I got closer. Too close, maybe. I parked a block away and walked down the street, hood pulled low. I stopped by their backyard fence, peering through the gaps. The house glowed with warm light, but inside it was anything but warm. They were screaming at each other. Him with a drink in his hand, her pointing fingers like knives. Even through the glass, I could feel the venom in their words. She shoved him, he slammed the counter, she stormed out of the kitchen, and he hurled the glass against the wall. I watched it shatter, pieces scattering across the floor, just like their fragile illusion of love. And God help me, I smiled. But smiling wasn't enough. I wanted them broken beyond repair. So I added more poison. I started sending texts. Anonymous numbers, different phones, little messages designed to twist the knife. To him, rumors that she was meeting someone else. To her, whispers that he was cheating during his late nights out. Just a few words, carefully timed, and suddenly every argument in that house carried an extra layer of suspicion. They didn't trust each other anymore, not fully. And without trust, even the strongest relationship collapses. It worked faster than I expected. Within days, the fights turned uglier. She'd leave the house for hours, slamming doors, ignoring his calls. He'd drink more, drive around aimlessly, come home late and reeking of whiskey. The walls of my old home echoed with rage and silence in equal measure. Meanwhile, Lily and I still lived in that motel. She kept asking why we couldn't go home, and each time my throat tightened. How do you tell a child that her mother chose a stranger over her? That we were homeless because of lust and greed? I couldn't, so I lied again, told her Daddy was working on it. Told her everything would be okay. And deep down, I knew it would be. Not because life was magically getting better, but because I was making sure they were getting worse. The sweetest moment came one Saturday afternoon. I was parked across the street again when Thomas stormed out with a duffel bag. He threw it into his trunk, slamming the lid so hard it echoed. My wife followed, yelling at him, but he didn't stop. He peeled out of the driveway, tires screeching, leaving her standing alone on the porch. She screamed into the night, fists clenched, her voice breaking into something closer to desperation than anger. I leaned back in my seat, exhaling like I'd just finished a fine meal. This was what I'd be waiting for. Watching her taste abandonment. Watching her feel the sting of being left behind. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I wanted her to hit rock bottom. I wanted her to know what it felt like to lose everything, just like she made me and Lily lose it all. And the best part? I didn't even need to lift a finger anymore. They were destroying each other for me. All I had to do was keep watching. Keep waiting. Revenge wasn't just a plan anymore. It was entertainment. By the time the third week crawled in, their life was no longer a castle with cracks. It was rubble, a pile of stones and glass where once they tried to build something shiny. I had been patient, I had been careful, but now it was time to step out of the shadows. Thomas was broke, or close enough to it. The clients I scared away weren't coming back, and the whispers had turned into rumors people repeated like gospel. His reputation in real estate was dust, and without that, he was just another washed-up man with a BMW that no longer started. The man who once strutted like a king now dragged his feet like a beggar. And my wife? She looked like a ghost. Gone were the dresses, the perfect hair, the smug smile. I saw her one morning when I drove past the house. Her hair was a mess, her eyes swollen from crying. She was sitting on the porch, smoking a cigarette she never touched when we were married. She looked old, like life had drained her faster than time ever could. It should have been enough. Watching them fall apart, watching karma chew them up and spit them out. But revenge isn't satisfied with enough. Revenge wants the final blow. The moment where they realized the storm wasn't just fate, it was me. So I planned my reveal. It started with a letter. Handwritten, old school, no fingerprints, no trail. I slipped it into their mailbox late at night. It was simple. Everything falling apart around you, that's me. I didn't sign it. Didn't need to. 2 nights later, I parked across the street again, engine off, and waited. I wanted to see their faces when they read it. I wanted to taste the fear, the confusion, the paranoia. Thomas came out first, the letter crumpled in his hand, veins bulging in his neck. He shouted for her, waved the paper like a weapon. She followed, her face pale, lips trembling. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew the fight wasn't between them anymore. For once, they were united, against me, the faceless ghost haunting their lives. The irony made me laugh. I let them stew in that fear for days. Every creak in the house, every car that slowed down in the street, every shadow passing their window, it could be me. I wanted them to feel hunted because that's what I had felt when she shoved me and Lily into the cold night. But watching them wasn't enough anymore. I wanted them to see me. So, one night, I finally walked up the driveway. The same driveway I once shoveled snow from, fixed cracks in, taught Lily to ride her bike on. My heart was pounding, my fists tight, but my steps were steady. I rang the doorbell. It took a minute, but the door opened. And there she was, my wife. Her face drained of all the beauty I once fell for, replaced by wrinkles of worry and the bitter taste of regret. For a second, we just stared at each other. She didn't speak. Neither did I. Not at first. But in that silence, the air was heavy. She knew. Maybe not the details, maybe not every move I'd made, but she knew it was me. The storm she felt every day was mine. And then Thomas appeared behind her, his eyes bloodshot, fists clenched. He tried to look tough, but he looked like a man on the verge of collapse. That's when I smiled. A slow, cruel smile. And I said, just enough. Just enough to cut them open. You thought you won, but this is me winning. I didn't wait for their response. Didn't need to. I turned and walked back down the driveway, the weight of 10 years lifting with each step. Behind me, I could hear them shouting at each other again. But this time, it wasn't about business or bills. It was about me, about the ghost that had ruined them. And for the first time since that night she locked me out, I felt alive. The collapse was complete. But one final blow still waited. The revenge wasn't done until they were buried under the weight of their own mistakes. And I was ready to deliver it. Revenge is like a storm. You can watch the lightning, listen to the thunder, but it isn't finished until it tears the roof clean off. I had taken their money, their pride, their smiles. But I wanted more. I wanted the final strike that left them crawling in the wreckage, knowing exactly who destroyed them. After the night I stood on that porch, I became more than a ghost to them. I became real, and fear made them crumble faster than anything else. Thomas stopped going to the bar. My wife barely left the house. They lived like prisoners in my old home, looking over their shoulders, jumping at every sound. It was beautiful. But fear wasn't enough. Fear fades. I wanted scars. So I set my plan in motion. Thomas had one deal left, a last-ditch property sale that could have saved his career, maybe even his relationship with her. I knew about it from the bar gossip and from the whispers I'd followed. It was his lifeline. Without it, he was finished. Completely. I made sure that deal never happened. The night before the signing, I slipped into the office. Breaking in was easier than I expected. Desperation makes men sloppy, and Thomas had been sloppy for weeks. His files were sitting there, contracts half finished. All it took was a few adjustments. Numbers changed, signatures tampered, emails sent from his account that would come back to haunt him. When the client showed up the next morning, the deal was dead on arrival. Fraud was the word they used. And fraud in real estate is a kiss of death. By sunset, Thomas was done. No clients, no money, whispers turning into public accusations. His company dropped him, colleagues distanced themselves, friends turned into ghosts. He was nothing, a man with an expensive car that didn't run, and a woman who was starting to regret ever leaving her old life. And her? Oh, her collapse was even sweeter. I left one final letter in the mailbox. Not to both of them, just to her. Short and sharp. This is what you chose. This is what you left us for. I don't know if she cried when she read it. I don't know if she tore it up, screamed, or sat in silence. But I know this, she felt it. She had to. Because the next night when I drove past, I saw her on the porch again, cigarette burning, tears streaking her face while Thomas yelled inside. And for the first time, she looked like the one left out in the cold. Just like she had left me and Lily. That was the final strike. Not the letters, not the broken deals, not the ruined car. It was the moment she realized she had traded love, loyalty, and family for a sinking ship, and now she was going down with it. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to fight. I didn't even need to touch them. I just let the storm eat them alive, while I stood on the outside, holding the umbrella. Weeks later, Lily and I moved into a small apartment. It wasn't much, but it was ours. No mildew, no buzzing neon, no whispers of regret. Just peace. Every night, she'd fall asleep in her new bed, clutching her bunny, and I'd watch her breathe easy. That was my real victory. Giving her back a life that her mother had tried to take away. As for my wife and Thomas, their story ended the way most rotten stories do. He vanished, probably ran off when the lawsuits started piling up. She stayed, stuck in the ruins, stripped of everything she thought she deserved. A queen without a crown, living in a house that smelled more like ashes than home. And me? I moved on. Scarred, yes, but stronger. Colder. Wiser. People say revenge doesn't fix anything. Maybe they're right. It doesn't erase the betrayal, doesn't bring back the years I lost. But it does something else. It balances the scales. And for me, that was enough. Because in the end, I didn't just survive. I won. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. That's free and only way to support us. Thank you.